Good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to Brunch with Bobby. I'm Jeff Finn here with Bobby Babis. Bobby's going to take us on a deep dive into building your system with data integrity to make sure you get optimal value down the road. So it's really important to set up your system correctly in the first place and to have your data table set, your field set, and your controls in place for data veracity and to keep it verified and up to date, clean and efficient, so that when you're looking for data, you get just what you need and not a lot of what you don't need. So Bobby's going to show us some best practices on that and go through I don't know, 20-30 minutes on that, and we'll open up for Q&A. Certainly Q&A along the way. Use the question box in the go to webinar screen. I will field them and tee them up for Bobby as we go through the process. And that's it. So hope you're all doing well, faring well, and taking advantage of the time. Glad you're here. Send us ideas for future sessions. We'll have a calendar out later today and tomorrow for registration for the next few weeks. So just want to make sure we're covering all the topics that you want to have covered in this series. So Bobby, take it away.
Thank you much, Jess, and hi, everybody. I'm glad you could join us today. So again, I'm Bobby. I've been with RealNext since RealNext was RealNext. So I'm on the customer success team, if you don't know me, and I love teaching people about how to use the system in order to, I've gotten to watch a lot of you become experts in the system, and hopefully, this will be useful to all ends of the spectrum. And like Jeff said, today we're going to be talking about making sure that the data that you keep in your database is fresh, good, and useful to you. So last session, we talked about uploading data from data sources like Excel spreadsheets that, you might have some data sources that you pay for on a regular basis. I'll go ahead and start showing my screen lest I forget here momentarily.
There you go. Perfect.
And it's showing RealNext, right?
Got it.
All right. So yeah, we talked about importing those spreadsheets, and from those data sources, and that's a great way to begin a database. But remember one thing: everybody, for the most part, has access to the same data sources. So that only is going to get you part of the way there. The real value of your database comes from what you do with the information afterwards, as you're speaking to people, capturing their buyer needs, their tenant requirements, things like that are really going to be the value of your database and what you can actually do with it. So if you see here on my screen, I'm showing kind of an example, and this is probably a little bit unrealistic of an expectation, but I'll talk about that a little bit too. So what you're really wanting to do, though, is track the information that's important to you that you're going to be able to use later on down the road to find those records that are important to you. And the same is going to pertain to contacts or for properties. So the first step whenever, starting to build out your database or, beginning anew with your database, deciding to clean it up and kind of start tackling it from a different perspective, is to first figure out what is going to be valuable for you to know and to be able to find those people again in the future. So if you deal with primarily investment sales and what properties they own becomes important, and you tend to create your call lists based on similar buyers based on purchase price and acreage, as well as county or other geographical requirements. You want to make sure that in your properties database, you're tracking all of those different fields and filling them in each and every time that you have a new property record. Anytime you upload information, you want to make sure that's as filled in as possible, and that's what you really want to research each and every time. And one way that you can kind of keep the focus on those pieces of information that are really valuable to you is to set up color coding on the fields in your database, so you can quickly, at a glance, see what fields you want to make sure you capture. So right now, we've kind of got a blank canvas, and it would be difficult to figure out exactly which of these fields I want to make sure I capture each and every time. But on each of the fields, you can just simply right-click on the field label itself, or if you're on a Mac, you can do the two-finger tap on it, as I've learned this week working with clients. when you go to the field definition, this is where you can change the caption of the field, which is useful when you're wanting to make custom fields under your user fields. But you can also here set the color setting for it. And here you can either type in a name of a color. So I've just always liked going with light blue. It has a nice little look on it and doesn't completely seem jarring to the eyes. But you can also use the color selector here and pick exactly, which color from down here as well. So when you save that, now that's going to catch the eye a little bit quicker. Now, for me, blue works for that. For other people, that's not necessarily going to be the case. But again, this is a matter of personal preference. But this is something I find is almost always valuable to do, is to just make sure that you set up your fields with some colors. And another way you can also kind of go a little bit another step further on that is by color coding different fields that are there for different purposes. So, for example, if you deal in investment sales, but you deal in office, multifamily, and retail, you're kind of a jack of all trades in that. Different fields are going to be valuable to different fields or to different product types. So, for example, you could have all of the generic fields labeled in blue, but then down here in the detail section, like, for example, grade doors, we want to just mark that one as red to be used for, let's say, industrial properties. So we can mark all of those fields that are specific to that product type with that one specific color and kind of use color coordination to, quickly at a glance see which fields are pertinent to this property. Based on the property type. So that just kind of gives you a quick and easy way to see exactly what information you want to fill in each time. And I'll actually go back to the contacts because this is just as valuable, if not more so, here, and an area that a lot of people end up skipping out on. A lot of people will just upload their properties and they have that, the square footage, they have the last sale date, they have the county that the property is located in, and for them, that's enough. That's all they really need to, determine exactly who they want to contact. But really, that's just going to work for property owners. A lot of the times, that's going to skip a large swath of who you actually reach out to. For example, buyers that you don't have the properties for, or potential sellers of them. Although that's a little bit more difficult to get into, but also for tenant information. So, in addition to tracking the property information, one of the biggest values of the contacts is being able to track requirements. And so if you see here, we've got the investor tab up with the different product information for what this type of person likes to purchase. And we've got office, industrial, retail, and so on. And if you notice, these are filled in with different codes. And we've kind of got a few different examples to kind of show exactly how you can use that in different ways. So for example, we've got MO here under office. And each of these are going to be actually available using this button on the right-hand side of the field. This button is what's called a pop-up table of value list. And it basically allows you to have different selections for the field, which one of the biggest benefits of utilizing the pop-up table here in order to enter the information is that each and every time you select from this list, you're going to be entering the data in consistently. So you're not going to, have an errant keystroke accidentally type QW instead of QU, which would actually be really impressive considering how far U and W are away from each other, or QI for that matter. Sorry about that. So you can also, so this is one of the ones that is pre-populated. So if any of you go into your database and you've never actually gone into here, you can kind of see exactly what this looks like. And this is an example of one where you have a key and a value that differ from one another, where the value that gets put into the field is an abbreviation of the key. And the reason for that, and you can see it here under Industrial Plus, is when you start having, 8 different selections here, you're going to run out of room on the field space. These fields have a max number of characters on them, so utilizing the codes allows you to have a lot more selections there. But if you're only going to have 1 or 2, like an example, for example, how land is here, you can instead, well, this one's not set up like that, but you can instead have the value set to the same thing as the key. Example of that would actually be under properties, building class. Well, no, construction type. I know this one isn't. So technically, key in this one is not exactly what it should be. This was just reversed at one point, but I can actually find one that's, oh, here. So for market, for example, we could say Southern California, and generally you're not going to select multiple markets on one property, possibly submarket if there is some overlap, but not honestly all that often. So we can just use Southern California there as the market and then just select that there. And so in that case, the value in the key should be the same. You're not going to need to use abbreviations as you're only going to put one value in there. So a lot of people actually, and this was actually a matter of discussion on our Facebook user forum, which I invite all of you to join and start getting into some discussions on RailNext there. It's been definitely fun engaging with everybody. So definitely do that if possible. But that actually came up on a topic there. Yes.
You know what? It looks like your screen, you must be on a larger monitor, so it's a smaller screen display for some of the people. It might, I'm not sure if you can enlarge it. Some people are posting. If there's a way to get a larger display.
Let me see what the audience view looks like. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to shrink that.
You know, Tim had that issue. When he was on a larger monitor, it was difficult for smaller. So I'm not sure if you have two monitors or not. But
I do, but the smaller one would be really awkward. But okay.
Just keep going.
Just set the. Well, here I can actually just do this. So. Let's actually go for this one. Not that. There we go. That should show larger, so it should actually now be in 720 instead of. Well,
much better.
Zoom out a tiny bit now. All right, if there's still issues, definitely let me know. But yeah, to go back to that, basically the value would then in those cases be the same as the key, even though this is honestly just a relic from the past of how it was set up, but it's either going to be one or the other. And there was actually that exact discussion on the Facebook group. And personally, I never remember what the actual key codes are for. And you can absolutely, just go into here and see exactly which ones are selected. QA is Class A, QU is Class B and C. But personally, my brain's just not wired to remember codes like that. So I try to avoid it where possible. But again, it's one of those things that's a matter of personal preference. Use the database. And
just as a reminder, you can change them for your own personal liking. The system comes preloaded, but you can custom.
Yeah, you can easily just go in here and just copy and paste the full value over the top. Although I do not want to do that on here.
No, but if you like a different code, whatever codes you're comfortable with.
All right, so field customization, pop-up fields, field colors. All right, so yeah, you want to make sure though that as you're going through and speaking to these people, you're actually capturing as much of this information that is pertinent to what you're going to want to use to find them again. Because ultimately, you can then use the filters in RailNext in order to find all of the records that match whatever criteria are valuable to what you're doing. So, for example, you get a new multifamily listing. Well, you would want to then find all of the buyers who are potentially interested in that. So we could then find, using the filters, we could go here to select filters, investor, and we could just find all of our multifamily buyers simply by just going to multifamily and saying is not empty. So that's going to show us anybody who has anything here in multifamily. But beyond that, if you wanted to just find, let's say it's a high-rise apartment complex that we have the listing for now, and we just want to find the buyers of high-rises. Oops, no, I do not want to save that. So yeah, it brings us down to 141. I'm wondering if that search actually went through.
No, you now need to do the multifamily equals HR, right?
Well, no. First, I wanted to see what just multifamily,
Okay. I
but
thought you were.
then in addition to that, you can then instead say multifamily contains high-rise, and then hit the 141 that we came up with all of our multifamily buyers. We just find the 70 people that are interested in high-rises. And we can see here from what our apartment minimum and maximum look like, although that's a bad example, that's done based on the total number of units. So we could then say we want to find, this is a 100 unit building, so we can then further filter that and find just the people whose maximum is greater than 100. So we can hit the add button here. And once again, go here to the investor fields, and we want apartment maximum, because we don't want anybody whose maximum number of units that they purchase is less than the total number of units in this. So we actually want greater than or equal to in this case. So rather than 70, that brings us a total of 47 potential buyers. So now let's say that this is a search that we're going to want to do on a regular basis. We're going to want to find all of our high-rise greater than 100 on a fairly regular basis. We can then hit the save button here to save this filter. And high-rise buyers 100 plus units. And then hit the save button. And now we can then hit the load button anytime we want. And we're going to see high-rise buyers 100 plus units. We can also mark this as a favorite right here in order to have that show up on the display. And then once I refresh the screen, like let's say it's tomorrow, we come in, we have no filters set when we come in, but we want to find that same list of buyers in order to send them to a group, in order to send a mailer through Marketplace for our new listing that we want to send out to all of them. So we can go here to filters. And because we set it as a favorite, it's going to just automatically show up in that drop-down list. So for anything that you're regularly finding yourself setting, 3-5 layer filters on, you can use this in order to save you a ton of time every day, just clicking on that and going right back to your 47 records. And of course, you could do something similar by putting these records into a group rather than saving the filter. But let's say tomorrow, we start adding some more contacts into our database. We went to a networking event and met some people and have, some new business cards that we copied in through Camcard and synced in. We went in and put in their buyer requirements, and a few of them actually matched those requirements. The benefit of a saved filter is tomorrow, any new records that are added that match those filter requirements, so buyers of high rises above 100 units, those are going to show up in the search. So we added 2 more people that match those requirements tomorrow. This is going to have 49 people instead. So groups in this case can be something a little bit more temporary, where you can then, once you're ready to actually send out your marketing campaign through Marketplace, you can then click on the group button here, click add to group, and do the records in the current query, meaning the records that match the filters. So that's always going to be whatever number is down here at the bottom left, that's going to match the records and number current query. So hit proceed. And then we can add a new group directly from here as well. So let's say we actually have Washington Avenue Apartments mailer. So Washington Avenue Apartments is the listing that we just got. It's a 100 unit high-rise complex downtown. We can then just hit save and then add these contacts to this group. So now that way, when we go in and want to start a Marketplace email campaign, that group of contacts is going to show up directly on there. Should just use the apparently. No, we'll just do it on Blue Diamond Land then. But now when you actually go into and want to create an email campaign on this, and here you'll also see all of our brand new amazing templates that you have in here under the pre-designed templates. We've actually added a number of these. So if you haven't taken a look at here in a while, a lot of these templates have been added and modified, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people. So I'm just going to select one of these and let it kind of fill everything out for me, as we're not going to actually send anything. But on the final step now, this is going to have a, well, actually it will not, because my contacts aren't set to that database. It's probably something that most of you won't have an actual issue with, is you don't have 15 databases you're connected to. Sorry, my screen gets a little bit laggy, and I'm impatient when I'm doing. Bear with me for just a second. There we go. So now we can just go in here to, I don't think it actually saved my, well, we can actually just use the group from last week that we actually created here. I'll have to actually go and select that, as I'm probably going to do this multiple times. But either way, your groups are going to show up each and every time that you create right from here. So yeah, this is just showing a different database that I used last week. Let's see. So the same thing is going to apply to properties as well. You can create your filter. Yeah.
So you had the 100-unit listing this week, and now you pick up a 250-unit listing. And particularly for some more complicated filters, the ability to open that filter and just make a quick change. So you're basically cloning.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really good point. So yeah, we can just. So we have our 47 contacts that are only interested, or that are interested in 100+ units in 100+ units of high-rise buildings. But next week we actually get a 250-unit building, like Jeff said. We can simply go into here, and this is probably going to be something that we're going to use on a fairly regular basis. Like, we're going to want to just target the people based on the number of units on a regular basis. So then we can just hit search. And instead we get 17, and then can just save this as a brand new search as well. Yeah, hit enter on cancel, unfortunately. And add to my favorites list. So now we will have that selectable right here. So when we come in again next week, we can just keep massaging that each and every time, and save each one. And as you go through, you can also remove the ones that become stale. So you can always go to the load screen here to remove any of the additional ones, because I mean, this list will eventually grow. Or you can even simply just remove them from your favorites, so that they don't show up on the drop down. You'll always still have them here under the list here. I mean, it'll give you some pages that you can just scroll through once you get a large number of them. And ideally you do get a large number of them, as again, that's really the power of having a CRM, is being able to track that information that is pertinent to what you're going to be searching. So you can see, like, that same concept can apply to tenants with their requirements, how many units, or how many, like, what their business type is, minimum square foot and maximum square footage requirements, what type of leases they're looking for. And then from properties, you can do similar, and then use that to, as we showed last week, to find the linked owners of those buildings. So same concept, you can set up those same filters within properties. Or yeah, time just drags when you're stuck at home, doesn't it? Yeah, last Tuesday, so 2 days ago. But yeah, once you you set your filters in here, I'm not sure if I actually have. Yeah, so like on Tuesday, we actually set up the Las Vegas office sold in the last 5 years. We could then just apply that filter here. It brings us to our 7 properties, and then just easily go to contacts owner to bring up those of those 7 buildings. So you can use the save filter in the properties and then still run the lookup link each and every time to find the contacts and then add them to a group for marketing purposes, or to, create a cold call list to start going through. And I believe that's actually a little bit of what we're going to be talking about next week. And this time I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that time period.
Yeah. You might want to also talk about how that applies to columns. You've got the search to get your list refined, but if I'm dealing with buyers, I want different information than if I'm dealing with tenants. And
yeah, that was actually the last item on my list, was doing the same thing, being able to save your different column views here. So as you see right now, I've just got like some general basic information as well as some investor fields. So you can actually customize the columns that appear in this list here and save those different column lists so they appear quickly and easily. So we've got office owner cold call. That's what this one is called. So this is useful to me when I want to go through this list of people and I want to just see what type of office products they buy and what price range they tend to purchase in here. But if I'm going to be canvassing for tenants, that's not going to be nearly as useful of information. So rather than that, like let's say I wanted to, I was making a list of contacts that their lease is expiring in the next year and a half. Well, I'd also want to have a column view that matches that as well. So we can go here to edit, and this is going to give us a list of first all the fields that appear in the list. So we can just either click on these and click on the left arrow, or you can simply double click on any of these to remove them from the right hand side. And let's actually just pare down our list a little bit more. We're just going to call one of these 2 numbers, and yeah, the rest of that's useful. But then we can go here into the tenant fields, and let's say we want to show their expiration when their lease, let's actually just go with lease expiration, square footage, rent per square foot, and should be pretty good. Yeah. So when we hit apply, that's going to change our field view here. So we actually see now the notes, the lease expiration, square footage, and rent per square feet. This will probably be more useful if I actually just start from contacts and go with tenants instead of buyers of those properties. So let's just do a simple switch to tenants. And so now we've got those fields are going to be a lot more useful to us when we start canvassing. And now we can go here to columns and manage, and from that go back to edit rather. And so from this screen, you can also save as, and then you can either save it as a new list or you can override one of your existing column lists. So if you wanted to make changes to this and then edit it, you can do save as existing. In this case, we're going to do new.
Before you do it, if you could just, now I don't want to have all that tenant information all the way on the far right. Just to remind everyone, how you can move information around.
You can.
Depending on your screen size.
See, this is why I like having somebody else on the call that can interrupt me with stuff like that, because this is the type of stuff I just see every day and don't necessarily think about. You get so used to something, and something you forget, like what it was like to learn this stuff to begin with. So yeah, you can absolutely change the actual order of the columns that you want. So let's say we want the company to appear above here as well, and this is actually going to apply to the list that you save as well. So when you save this, the order in addition to exactly which fields you selected are going to be saved here. So it's called tenant lease expiration. So now we can easily just toggle back and forth between those. Of course, I didn't set it as a favorite, so yeah, saving them as the favorites really makes all the difference in the world, because now, when we want to change gears, it takes literally one click once you set that up. So setting up your different field lists might take a little bit of time from the get-go as you figure out exactly what pieces of information are going to be valuable to you. And you'll probably modify that over the course of time as you find out well, actually, I really need to be able to see this at a glance each time as well. And so then as you refine that, you can keep just saving over them. That way, you can just quickly at a 2-second notice, change your column view to change gears and change what you're doing for the hour. So that was everything on my list.
So I think you had a couple other things, at least you mentioned to me, that would be interesting. One was that you didn't have, that I think we should just remind everybody, since it's new, is Tim's secret menus. To be sure to, whenever you've got a list view like that, to right click, because all of the most relevant actions, depending on where you're at, will be at your fingertips, one click away. So if you're in properties, it's going to have certain, and contacts different, and in other areas different. So each one will give you what you're most likely to want to do in just one click away, and then you can do it without having to leave the record. You can do what you need to do and get back into the mode of canvassing.
And that's right click or double tap on the trackpad for a Mac.
And then verify. You want to talk about verify?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's actually higher on the list. I just actually skipped it. So one other, actually, I don't like this view. I much prefer the split screen view. I like the list showing up on the left-hand side so I can quickly click on stuff. So let's say we're talking to Dong Chin and we've updated his business requirements here. So we just added his minimum and maximum here. One thing we can do is there's this verify button at the top of the screen. So every time you talk to somebody and verify their information, you know that their phone numbers are now correct. You hit the verify button. And now down at the bottom of the record, it's going to show exactly when the last time that button was pressed. So what the idea is, you now know how recently this information is accurate. So every time you reach out to somebody, and of course you can also go into here, edit, and go in here to date verified, and we can actually put that right there. And we'll just hit apply for right now, but of course we could save that list as well if we wanted to keep that. But that way, at a glance, we can just keep the screen at the top here and see the last time we actually verified this information. So now we get to Glenn A. Sharp, and we reach out to him and we realize, well, we haven't updated his information since 2014, so it'll be a good idea to reach out and get in touch with him to then update the information and then hit the verify button as you talk to each and every person. So that way, as you keep going through your list, and it actually will refresh as soon as you actually refresh the screen. But
so a few things, Bobby. One of the comments that came in, it was a good suggestion about, and we talked to the development team about it, but making certain fields mandatory. I know that the way Tim designed it is, rather than make fields mandatory, he actually used the color coding and that date, the verify, to help control that. So by coding like you did earlier, and maybe there's 3 red fields, those are the ones that you want to be sure you have up to date. You can then at least highlight those and then see if there's a blank next to it. So you know that, okay, these are my most important fields and they're blank. You could then also create a report that has, if any of these fields are blank, please show up. And then you would have a view of all of the records that don't have those mandatory fields completed, and you can manage through the update process with that. Make sense?
yeah, I'm actually showing kind of, you can actually even also, for those fields, like let's say for all tenants, we want to show all of the ones, we want to make sure that the lease start and lease expiration are not due. We got lease expiration is empty and lease start is empty. And then we can say, and tenants is true. So that's going to show us all of our contacts that are marked as tenants that have either a blank lease expiration or a blank lease start date. So let's say that those on our tenant fields were actually fielded in red. You can then save that filter as tenant required fields. And that way, as people are entering data in, so maybe once a week at the end of the week, you'll want to just bring up that list of contacts and go through and figure out what Bill Smith's lease information is, figure out Darius, Demetrius, and so on down the list. And then as you're going through and filling in those lease expirations and lease starts, these will no longer show up in that filter. So next week when you run it, it's just going to show new contacts that were added that have the tenant checkbox checked, and one of those two fields is blank.
And often those fields are going to be in the same section, and you want to just show the collapsible and how you can just scroll through the list and you stay on that section, so you can pretty quickly get through that. Next, it's rolling out weekly now, but within the coming weeks, you'll actually be able to enter and update those fields right on the inline editing. So if it's in a subtable, you can do it already. So if those mandatory fields are in one of your subtables, you can just click on the field and update it right there. So that makes it very efficient to go through, and we'll have it throughout the whole system within the next few weeks. But
yeah, right now it's implemented in dashboard. Next, it'll be in companies, and then to all of the different tables throughout the entire database. Inline edit, something a lot of people have asked for, and it really does speed up the process. I mean, it makes it to where managing your database is just as simple as updating an Excel spreadsheet, but way more powerful, as you're not working with just an Excel spreadsheet that's not related to anything.
But and it's not just words. It is, you've got your tables there, all your links and other accessible information to maintain data integrity. Let's see. I'm not sure if I understand this. You might, when I right click, open details is not available, only copy details. I'm not sure where you're at, Jonathan. If you want to just maybe let us know what screen.
Well, it's this screen right here, copy details to clipboard. I'm not sure what open details would actually be either, though.
Open details would be on the right. So as you're scrolling on that list on the left, you're going to the right. And if you want to go to the detail from a list, you should just click on that field and it opens up.
Yeah, like basically there's no open record right from here. So you have to just left click instead if you're just in the full list view like that. Because yeah, copy details to clipboard is to do that, and then when you paste it, it comes out with the, in the case of properties, the property address, name, city, state, and zip code. Which is nice and handy, honestly. That's something that a lot of people don't know that even exists. So, like, once you look up a property in your database, you can right-click, copy details to clipboard, and then just quickly paste it into an email, like, say you're emailing one of your colleagues. Makes it a lot easier than typing it.
So, we one of the things that we take for granted, Bobby, is the split screen, and it's my favorite view as well. It's a hard one to indicate where it's at and how it works. If you could just show people how to access the split screen, because it is the best way.
So this less than symbol, or the left-hand side of the heart, if you're emoji positive, will split out the screen to where when you've got your list on the left-hand side, see the actual details of the record on the right-hand side. And this is on 720 monitors. It can be a little bit squished sometimes, but honestly, it would probably be a lot better if I was actually on my real size, because it actually does resize automatically. There we go. That makes it a little bit easier to see. Oh, geez. No, that makes it way harder to see. Yeah, my eyes aren't bad, but they're not that good. But yeah, so it's always just going to be this little button here. This X will get rid of it, and then this button here will actually bring the record into the full screen views. to be doing a lot of changes to the fields on the record, like you're researching properties, it could be a good idea to just bring up the record into full screen. And then when you click on the X, it'll just go right back to this screen. And then if that ever happens, you can always just click on that little left caret and to the right of the columns button. And same's going to apply everywhere, that there's a split screen view, which is pretty much all of the different tables.
So a question is, on the left side, the list view on split screen, how can I adjust the columns? And since that's a smaller area, you would just want to create a view for your split screen that might be 4 or 5 columns, but you can navigate to the right. So you can set up a column display, which Tim mentioned something last week, which is interesting. So you can set up the column display, which is the full display, and use it, or you might have a special view that you want to use when you're on your phone or on a tablet or in a split screen mode. So you can set up the view of columns however you want it based on the situation that you're in. So if it's a tenant view, it could be tenant view split screen or tenant view iPhone or whatever, and you've got sort of the max view of tenant and then a minimum view of the tenant information in a column format. Boom. So really fast, you hit your filters with the drop down, with the favorite there to get the data that you want, then you get the view that you want, and you're ready to go to work. It hasn't come up, but since there was a question about columns, just want to show the map view, which we haven't done much. Some people might want to get a visual display of properties. The pin will plot all of your records, whatever type of record, on a map. And then
I figure doing it with filters is usually a little bit better when you can actually see it geographically. This will probably be a little bit easier to see than my database, which has properties around the country in it. And then if you actually click on any of the pins, it'll show the full property on the right-hand side
there. One of the I think most important parts about maintaining your data integrity is working with system tables and making sure your system tables are configured so that, particularly if you're working in teams or in a company, everyone is entering information in the same way. And we'll talk about this in another session about projects and how you set up the project setup. But be sure to set your events and property types and attachment. The system does come preloaded, but don't get intimidated by that or feel limited by that. You can do whatever you'd like to make the tables work for you, as well as the field labels work for you. You know, every geography might have a little bit different terminology for how they're talking about things or referencing.
And actually, you just brought up a good point that I think I did skip. For consistency in data entry, one thing you also can do is for fields like this that that have like different pick lists on the right-hand button there, you can actually require the use of that pick list by right-clicking and on the name itself and going to field definition, like you're adding a color or you're changing the caption. There's also a checkbox there to must use pop-up table. So especially if you're on a team with multiple people, this forces consistent data entry every single time. So now you can't just put your cursor in there and type, and you can't end up screwing anything up. And I think all of us are susceptible to that. We're humans. We have keyboards. We're not going to be perfect, but this kind of forces perfection. And I think anything that can kind of do that for you is going to be beneficial. So wherever you have absolutely critical fields that you want to make sure that you're capturing each and every time, it's a good idea to force the use of the pop-up table, especially in multi-user environments. Just the more people you add, the more chances for errant keystrokes are the most common thing, and everybody's susceptible to those.
And what is the difference between a single entry or a multi-entry pop-up table? Lost your audio. So using the comma delimited or comma separated value will give you the ability to have multiples. So make sure you set it up with that if you want the multiple select versus the single select. Bobby, what happened to your microphone? We will be right back. So while Bobby's coming back, we've lost his audio for a second. We do look to continue the program through the duration of the work from home environment. So please do send in any ideas for future sessions. We've got a schedule of them, but your feedback might trump our schedule if we get some good feedback from the group. So Bobby, sounds like you're back. I think
yes, I am. And yeah, I was going to say, I like to be agile and be able to, change on the fly. So if, we get 5 people saying they want to see something, I'd rather show them that anytime.
So here's a question. I'm noticing on the web, you can't delete property types in the system table. I have some old ones that I want to delete. Is that correct, or are we looking at it a different way?
Yeah, so the property types themselves can't actually be deleted on the online version as of right now. So what we generally suggest is to basically reuse those ones instead of adding new ones after the fact. Like, let's say we're no longer using store building. Well, we can then just go into here, edit that, and change it to one that we are ultimately going to use. It doesn't benefit you in removing items from the list itself, but it makes sure at least you're not adding additional items. And I'm not sure if that's planned or anything like that.
So make a note of that. One thing, it sounds like what you could do is just make them Z, and so they'll drop down to the bottom of the list, and so you can at least.
Yeah, it's always alphabetical, so that is.
All right, next question. When I'm in split screen, the detail is 2/3 of the screen versus Bobby's 50/50. So you can show how you can adjust the. Why is yours 50/50? And we have to check on that, Rob. It must be.
Yeah, I don't have an answer on that.
I haven't seen it like that before, so we'll check on that display setting on split screen.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any way to change that.
Ari's got a question for a team of 4. How do you save the search so that all the team members can use the same template? Yeah, one of the sessions that we have coming up will be heavily involved in teams and configuration, but this is a great question for today.
Yeah, so I mean, the filters by default are going to show up. In this case, the team is set to everyone, so that means anybody on the team will actually be able to see this in their list of filters. So I'm guessing that by default, you guys have it set to private, which my database doesn't even have give me the ability to do. But if that's set to everyone, then everybody on your RailNext database will be able to see that. So if you're sharing a database, that is basically the one thing that will set that. The one thing they'll have to do is actually set it for their privates or for their favorites.
And they'll have to have the rights. And so you just make sure you have the user rights and privileges to be able to do that. And if you don't, your administrator can, whoever owns the license can give you the privilege.
Which I do not. Tim does not trust me with his database. With good reason.
Doesn't even trust. See, some people won't even have that option, the team setup, because they don't control the license for their team. So whoever's controlling the license for the team, and next time when we get to that session, Bobby, we'll make sure you're configured with that setup, so you can show the team configuration.
Oh, yeah, I can easily do that myself. I keep it off because I actually don't think it's a bad idea. Like. A lot of people think that taking away admin privileges is like a bad thing, but honestly, it's one of those things that helps you make sure that your data integrity is maintained by, disallowing certain things. It might come into a roadblock every now and then that might be annoying, but trust me, it's a lot less annoying than the work that you'll ultimately have to do to clean up your database if something goes awry. So I've worked with enough customers to learn over the course of time that having a little bit of training wheels, especially when you're starting, is not the worst thing in the world. And once you get more used to the data entry and everything like that, turning that on later on isn't, the worst idea. So yeah, I'm actually a big proponent of that, and just kind of separating who can do what.
You mentioned, and I've mentioned in the past, CamCard, and there's a couple of third-party tools that automatically sync with Outlook, and because your RealNext platform can sync with Outlook, they by default sync with us. So you can take a picture of a business card using a tool like CamCard that will upload that information into your Outlook, and if your Outlook sync is set up for contacts, that information all comes straight through to RealNext. There's also a tool called EverConnect, which does the same type of thing for email traffic. EverContact, I'm sorry, yep. So yeah, so a couple of tools out there, EverContact and CamCard, are great ways to be able to capture contact information. EverContact, it takes emails as well as you can highlight a name on a website and it grabs it and brings it in. And again, it brings it into your Outlook, and if your Outlook folder is synced with RealNext, your information is coming straight through. I explained that properly, Bobby?
Yeah, it sounded perfect.
Guy, I'm not sure if you had a question or just as a comment. So you're saying it's easier and more efficient to use filters than queries on the desktop. I'm still trying to transition from the desktop. It seems to
yes,
us.
it is.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that sentiment. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I almost miss using the overly convoluted queries on the desktop version, just because it's a skill that I had to pick up, and I feel like I'm almost cheating using filters online a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, just the ands and ors are so much easier to manage on here than you almost had to learn a little bit of programming in order to use the queries on the desktop version, whereas the online version, this is one area. And I think you'll start seeing more and more of those things. I actually had a question from a client that I still have to answer, and I'm thinking he's probably on this call, so not a bad time, but it's a great time to really amp up your use of the online version. And if you are still using the desktop version, start to get away from that, as all of our new functionality that we're adding to the system is going to be on the online version. It's the way of the world these days, especially now. But I mean, even prior to that, it still was the best way to be able to get your work done, as it's platform agnostic. You can bring it up on your phone, you can bring it up on your computer. You have the best of both worlds in that ability. And adding any additional moving parts to a system is just going to complicate matters. So the quicker you can get acclimated to the online version, the better I think you'll be, because you'll also get to start using, I mean, we have new functionality releasing almost every week at this point, and not just small things like the inline.
Lost your audio again, at least for me. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a bandwidth issue, Bobby. But while Bobby is getting his audio back, Jonathan suggested Office Lens is a Microsoft product that you might also want to take a look at, like CamCard, so for OCR and PDF conversion as well. Bobby, can you hear me? He's still working. Well, it looks like we've got through all the questions. If anyone has any last minute questions, we do have a few minutes left before breaking. We will take them. If I don't see any other questions, we'll wrap up. Great to have you all with us. Thanks again, Bobby. Again, if you have ideas for future sessions, let us know. we'll be sending out a calendar and a registration invite later today or tomorrow to get geared up for next week. So hope you all have a great weekend. Be well and stay safe. And thanks for joining us. Thanks, Bobby, as always. Bye-bye.
My pleasure, and thank you all.